Welcome, Erik, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Lord Dying. This new piece really is a great album, Clandestine Transcendence, by the way. Great album. Congratulations of this new one. So
Thank you.
also, I think we'll start by asking a common questions. In all interviews, why the band delayed for five years to release the new album?
Mostly because of the pandemic, actually. Um, we wrote it, we started writing it basically when Mysterium Tremendum came out, and then we recorded it in August of 2022 and had it turned in and ready to go basically by 2023, around October, November, but then it took a while with the pressing plant and everything, and it ended up being January of 2024.
Mhm.
So it's sort of like it took 5 years, but the way we see it from our end, it took about 2.5.
Okay, okay. I remember Lord Dying because I heard your band when you released Poison Altars. I remember that album to release records, and at that time you did a formula. You did a curious formula like slush metal, stoner metal, this kind of stuff. But then I remember when I hear Mysterium Tremendum, the band incorporated with a lot of kind of things. It's not like anymore slash metal bands. Well, it's a metal band with a lot of flavors. That's the only conception that I can describe your music. So also, when I hear this clandestine transcendence, I they know the same. You play death, black, heavy, well, whatever you want in this case. That's amazing. The album, it's a very very amazing. But for me, it's my point of view because I'm a reviewer, interviewer, work in a website. But since your point of view, uh, which which is the main difference that exists in this album compared to the first three?
Um, like we definitely had a similar approach that we adopted for this album that we had with Mysterium Tremendum, in the sense that we we didn't want to have any boundaries, like stylistically or creatively or in the songwriting process. And when we demo it and we write everything, we go piece by piece and go wherever we feel like the song needs to go. And sometimes that crosses different genre barriers, which we have no problem with. uh, Probably do even more on the next record, but we'll see what happens.
Okay, okay. But talking about, as I mentioned, the first two albums is like the Slush, a very road well known. But with Mysterium Tremendum, you approach for a progressive, a lot of things mix a lot of things. So who came with
Mhm.
the? You mentioned also that you since the previous album, Mysterium Tremendum, you tried to do mix a lot of things. You had no boundaries about the situation. But in this case, how was the composition process of this Mysterium Tremendum? Did you think in the past of the band because you stay with the slush, this kind of aspect, and then with the third album you decide completely focus on other kind of thing?
I would say, like with Mysterium Tremendum, especially, well, it's more about the concept of the record. When we were starting to write that, we realized that we wanted to do a concept record, and then which led to a trilogy. And Chris especially, but me, both of us have always loved progressive rock, especially like 70s stuff. And the majority of those records were all like concept records. And that was when we knew we wanted to do a concept record, like, okay, we need to get our influences from 70s prog in there. And that's really why that record is so, especially the cover is so colorful. It's a nod to Yes for sure. Even like the title Mysterium Tremendum, the logo, or the font used is basically the Yes font. We did like a Yes t-shirt too. But that and then I think that just because we got more comfortable with doing that sort of songwriting, um, it pops up a lot more on Clandestine Transcendence as well. But in general, it's because that, I mean, progressive rock and especially like the groundbreaking artists in the 70s like King Crimson and Yes, like Pink Floyd as well, they really were like the bands at the time that had no boundaries, and it's limitless what you could do with that kind of music, you know. So that's why I think it'll, from the future on, it'll always have some kind of a piece of what we're doing. But to the sludge thing too, that's just kind of the way me and him have always written really heavy music, and we've been doing bands since we were kids. So like almost 30 years now we've been playing music together. So that kind of heavy riffs are just the way we've always written. So that'll always be there too, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, okay. Okay, one thing that you mentioned it's about the cover art from Mysterium Tremendum, because as you mentioned, it's more colorful than the Disney one. So for me, I'm trying to take unit the dots because it's for easy. Disney, the Mysterium Tremendum has progressive rock, as you mentioned it, and the cover art also present this white cover art if you wear one coat. White, and now with Clandestine Transcendence, you decide completely the opposite because this cover art is more black, more darker. So, can we say that these two albums perhaps has a related concept and perhaps did with something the good and bad or the yin yang because white and this is black perhaps.
For sure. Yeah, no, it was intentional to have the Mysterium Tremendum is certainly more of the positive side of the concept, and I think that the new one is more of the darker side. Um, and then we'll see. I don't want to give too much away of what the next one will be, but yeah, that's totally right. I think like there's a yin and yang thing there happening. It's like a reflection.
Okay, nice. Okay, okay. Well, all the detail that I saw in this record is that you enter now working with MNR Key, yes, MNR Key Records for this new album, MNR Key Heavy. Sorry, MNR Key Heavy Records. So, and the previous one was released by E1. So for that, so in general, how was the transition to the previous one to the new one? And this Jin Yang concept affect in the way that you change the label?
No, actually. So E1 and Monarch, it's all the same people. They were bought by E1 was bought by a different company, but it's all the same people running it. And then they changed the name, but it's all the same thing, same band, same people working there. They're fantastic to work with, and we they just they gave us total creative control and basically let us see through to our vision what we want to do with the art and the packaging, the color variants, everything, videos. They're great. But it's the same people.
Okay, okay. Relating the things that related the things that you said about to change completely the genre of the band in Mysterium Tremendum. As I mentioned, when I remember when I hear the second album and then return to the first album, and usually this kind of when you compose the first album, some of the failures, and obviously all bands compose the first album, they are new composing, they are new recording, this kind of stuff because there's you are new as a musician. But then the time goes past, and you are much better musician, you are much better composer, and you're much better in everything because that's normal. You are growing as a musician. But related to this, the fans thinks differently because the fans sticks to the rawness of the previous album, of the first album, of the second album. And perhaps you are a fan of metal. I saw your t-shirt from long shirt from Undead, and perhaps for this I can aspect some fan thinks that the I prefer the rawness of the Lord Dying for the first album, but that rawness is related that you are new one in composing and writing music, but now you have much better experience to compose and writing music. So the question goes to the what's your opinion about when the musician gets better and better to compose and write it, but at the same time you lose the essence from the first time, because you will never play as the rawness that you played it for the first time. You never play like that.
That's true. Yeah, it's interesting to see that, especially over time with lots of different bands. Um, I think that one everyone can relate to is Metallica. Everyone loves the first records, and then it just hasn't been the same after the fourth record, in my opinion. But like, yeah, no, it's true. I think that, but you want to see, at least for all the bands that I really love, you see them change for the best, for the better part over time. And I think that it's important to grow and to change and try to challenge yourself. Otherwise, I don't get interested when I hear the same record over and over and over again, you know. I mean, and very few bands have been able to make that work and still be successful. Like, I love a band like Opeth that has changed constantly, and you know, if you compared even like Blackwater Park with the most recent one, it doesn't really sound like the same band, you know. But it's like, but if you listen to each record as it goes, you hear how it's changed and how much it's evolved and progressed. um and yeah, I agree, like there's a certain kind of rawness in the beginning that I think it's not a good idea to try to recreate that. Once again, you can look at Metallica, and I think they've tried to do that with a couple records because they know all their fans love their old shit, and they're like, well, let's try to do that again. It's like, you don't have that same kind of angst. It's a different world. It's just, you know, don't try to recreate teenage angst when you're in your 40s. I don't know. That's my opinion, but I don't know. For some of the Faithless, that was it. It was such a different time for us too. We were I don't think that we were, when we wrote those songs, it wasn't the idea really even of putting a record together. So when we made that record, it was just all the songs we had at that point. Whereas like with Mysterium Tremendum and Clandestine, both those records, very much conscious of everything we're doing, every song by song, the concept, everything. Um, and it's funny, like, you know, when you're, the longer you play and you go back and revisit a record, some of those songs I off of Summon I hadn't listened to in a long time, and now we're like, we're gonna play a couple of tracks at the show this weekend that we haven't played in like 10 years, and it's great to re-listen to those. But then when you listen to the record too, you're like, oh man, I can't believe we did this. I would totally do something a little bit different now and make it better, but maybe it wouldn't make it better, you know, because maybe those are the things that are great about old records, is that it just was what it was and it shouldn't be changed, you know.
Okay, interesting answer. So, a topic that is difficult for a band like Lord Dying, especially for me, because this new album is very varied, very different each song. It's very difficult to say, hey, this sounds much important than the other one. It's very difficult. You need to hear all album to get all feelings, sensations, textures, layers, etc. But now we are living in a simple world that prefers just singles. As you can see, we're returning on time. Remember that the 40s and 50s and 60s, the people spread the music just by singles at that time. And now we're returned to that era. To the people are just doing the playlist, this kind of stuff. So, do you think it's possible to fit 58 minutes into one song from this new album? And if you can't relate this aspect, and could we say that which songs for you would be for this new album?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't think that it's really about that. It's supposed to be about the journey, and that's one of the things that I love about concept records, is that it's I like to listen to a record from the beginning to the end, even when it's like an hour. I like long records. I was just listening to the new Bell Witch record yesterday, which is really long. But yeah, I don't know. That's hard. That's hard to say. I don't think that any one song really represents the whole record. And in fact, like, it was hard to choose singles because we're like, well, I don't want to give people the wrong idea. Like, we wanted to do I Am Nothing, I'm Everything first, and because we love the video and it's great. Um, it's one of our favorite songs to play live too. But it's like, I wouldn't say that that's really representative of the album and as its entirety, because it's not necessarily a harsh record. It's more about the roller coaster ride, you know. Um, So I don't know. I guess, yeah, I don't know. I would just suggest people to listen to the whole thing.
Okay, we are very close to this interview, Eric. And for this aspect, what kind of plans do you have for this new album? Perhaps you will do videos, perhaps you will embark on a Latin tour. Who knows? You will come for the first time to Latin America. Or who knows? You will
Ooh.
play in Europe, US. Who knows? What kind of plans do you have for this new clandestine transcendence?
Yeah, we would love to come to Latin America. We played in Mexico once, and that's as far south as we've been. I would love to do a full Latin America tour sometime. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess we're hoping to do more touring and visit places that we haven't been to. Um, and we're gonna keep writing to do the third installment in the trilogy. Um, yeah, tour and writing, I guess.
Okay, you mentioned about this more than once, that is the Mysterium Tremendum and Clandestine Transcendence are part of a trilogy. So, in
Hmm.
which in which perhaps if I try to relate the yin yang, this kind of stuff that I mentioned, perhaps this trilogy has to do with some kind of karma, or perhaps some cosmic spiritual thing, or perhaps what kind of, so what can you relate in what base this trilogy of this for these three albums? Perhaps a book. Who knows?
No, well, it stemmed from to be honest, yeah, it stemmed from Chris's sister dying while we were on tour, and he went home to the funeral and then came back and still finished. Oh, I don't know, another 6 weeks of tour or so. We were touring really hard at that time, um, but that kind of started the idea of what we wanted to do for this record, for the first record, Mysterium Tremendum, which was um, sort of a tribute to her and the ideas that we thought about trying to navigate um, loss and her death and everything kind of created this idea we wanted to do with the trilogy. And so the concepts were talked about at the time. And uh, so far, we haven't strayed from that. I think that the next one's going to be, it has to be the biggest one that we do. So um, I don't want to give too much away, but it'll be um, it'll be something for people to look out for sure.
Okay, okay. One of the last questions for this interview, as I mentioned in the first question, talking about other kind of aspects. I know that I know that you have 41 years old. So remember that the epoch, that the 80s and 90s, and for this aspect, that the music or the metal was against something, because the metal was against religion, against this politics, etc. A lot of things. 80s, 90s was the thing. Since 2000 stars, or since 2000 stars, the metal is now well more accepted. The metal is no against anything because now the metals were accepted. You can see commercials of the black metal people for a cops, for a flu. That's or perhaps other kind of people are joking about black metal, death metal, this kind of stuff. And now the metal is more accepted for a lot of people, especially with reunions, with familiars, etc. So, in this aspect, did you think the metal lost the essence during these new years? And because there's more accepted, yes, the metal is not need to be. I'm against with the religion, the Christianity religion. I'm Satanist, but now there is a church. So there's a Satanist church.
Yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know. um, it's certainly it's not really possible to be shocking anymore, and I think that there was a big element of that in metal in the beginning. Even going back to like Black Sabbath, but um, yeah, right. Satanism is not scary. There's nothing. There's nothing like, and like the '80s and the '90s with black metal, early '90s especially, like everyone was trying to out extreme each other, and that got some kids in trouble in Norway. But I don't know. That's not. Yeah, it's weird because now there isn't really. any way to do that, and I don't think anybody's shocked. There's just not. But I don't know that it's necessarily hurt the genre either. It's probably bigger than ever now because everyone is so connected. But it's also, I don't know. It's weird because there's not much of a music industry anymore compared to what it was then. So people aren't making money, But I don't know if that's gonna help the longevity of it or hurt touring. Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens. But as far as metal, I don't. It's yeah. There's not really any way to be shocking anymore. I don't know that people want that either. But yeah, I don't know. It was the '80s were the time when things were new and things were different. Bands like satanic Satanist stuff. I love all the first wave like black metal stuff like Venom and Bulldozer and even like Running Wild, like their first two records when they were singing about Satan. That stuff rules. But it's I can see like how it was scary at the time to people, but now it's just like I don't know. It's rock and roll, But I don't know. I don't know what if it anything is gonna if it's gonna hurt the future of metal or that everything is so accessible or what. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think for me the now it's metal more accepted because when I remember when I hear Cannibal Corpse in the 90s, when I appear with my T-shirt in the night with the Cannibal Corpse, the people is scared about why are you using
Right.
these kind of T-shirts? Now the people see in the streets in the street without shirt with whatever band that you please, brutal death metal especially. Ah, no pasó nada. There's
Right.
nothing happened. There's
Yeah.
nothing happening with that.
Yeah. It's funny. Maybe, and I don't think that any bands have gotten less brutal or extreme. Maybe just as a general population, the world is more acceptance of weird things. I don't know.
No, that is right. That is right. Well, Eric, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one like me. As I mentioned in the first
Yeah.
question, this album, Grandless and Transcendence, is a great album, great one. Congratulations on it. I did my pre-order, so I hope it arrives
Thank
soon.
you.
It's a great beast. Uh, So perhaps you want to add something to your Latin American fans and obviously Metalero followers.
Yeah. We would love to come there. Hopefully we can. I would love to play as much as possible. We would love to go to Latin America. Any Latin American promoters that see this, if they want to hit us up, please do. We would love to come. Thank you very much.